Good Thursday afternoon. Thanks for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Chris Harapsky. New this afternoon, fraud charges stemming from KARE 11 investigation into Minnesota's housing stabilization program. 8 people who the U.S. Attorney's Office says ran companies that defrauded Medicaid, stealing more than $10 million by allegedly providing housing services for people who needed it. That help was not happening, according to officials. Our KARE 11 Investigates team has been looking at this for more than a year. They found state officials were warned repeatedly about alleged fraud happening in the program and didn't do anything about it. Just yesterday, we learned the assistant commissioner of Minnesota's housing stabilization program was fired. And while there are 8 people charged today, U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson says there's a lot more coming.
Now, this is just the first round of indictments in this case. Unlike in similar cases, such as Feeding Our Future, we're going to charge this case in waves as we develop the evidence for individual defendants and companies. The plan is to charge groups of defendants and companies as their cases are ready for indictment. I've been prosecuting these cases for years, and I've literally run out of ways to express what is happening in our state and in our state programs, and to explain the coming iceberg I see as we reckon with the fraud.
Thompson also saying the people charged today created their companies to commit fraud. Our KARE 11 Investigates team has been all over this story. Make sure you tune in to KARE 11 News at 4, 5, and 6 for the very latest. So all this, as we said, coming after KARE 11 investigation blew the whole thing open. And one woman, just one, who noticed that fraud, spoke out. AJ Legault has the latest developments in Housing Hustle, a Recovery Inc. investigation.
It's gone on for far too long.
In the shadow of the Capitol Dome, Rachel Lean deciding to step into the light.
I think it's time to tell my story and let other people know that it's okay to come out and tell their story too.
She first told her story earlier this year to KARE 11, a story of being exploited by housing stabilization providers who falsified records and billed her Medicaid. But she stayed in the shadows, fearing her safety.
How would you describe that $14,000 that was billed to your Medicaid?
Fraud on every level.
Today, she's at the Capitol to testify publicly as the House Fraud Committee examines how the Housing Stabilization, or HSS program that was supposed to help homeless people find housing went so wrong.
I think I speak for everyone in the recovery community when I say that we are sick and tired of the rampant fraud and people getting rich off the backs of our addiction.
She called out the Department of Human Services for ignoring her until after KARE 11 told her story.
Within days of my story airing in May, a senior investigator finally called me back. I can't help but think that if I had not contacted KARE 11, would we even be here today discussing this?
The fraud hearing filled with fireworks. A surprise announcement that DHS had just terminated Eric Grumdahl, the assistant commissioner in charge of the HSS program.
I get a call at 7:30 and the department announces they fired the person responsible for housing stabilization services and homelessness.
DHS's new Inspector General, James Clark, took center stage, revealing the fraud has reached new depths.
We're seeing webs or rings of connected providers that are working together to commit fraud. I've also seen businesses committing fraud that have tentacles throughout the Medicaid program.
115 HSS companies have been terminated from billing Medicaid while investigations play out. Today, we learned those 115 companies combined billed taxpayers more than $100 million.
We have a provider vetting problem. We need to make it much, much harder for fly-by-night, unqualified providers to gain access to our programs.
As for Rachel,
my hope is that by doing this, others will tell their stories and real change will be made so something like this never happens again.
Today, her story was heard.
Thank you, Ms. Lean.
Thank you.
You raising your voice and speaking out is making huge changes throughout state government, and we really appreciate it.
Rachel's voice was a powerful one in exposing how our state has been ransacked by fraud. DHS leadership said due to state law, they could not comment on exactly why Assistant Commissioner Grumdahl was terminated. We've tried reaching out to him, but have yet to get a response. As Governor Walz begins his campaign for a third term, his handling of fraud in the state for the state's programs will be a topic of his opponents front and center. Joe McCoy has a closer look at how both sides are addressing the issue.
The millions of dollars in fraud uncovered within Minnesota state agencies is something Governor Walz is likely to face intense scrutiny for in his campaign for his third term as governor.
I think he has failed to hold his agencies accountable.
Kristen Robbins is one of Walz's Republican opponents in the race for governor. She also is the chair of the House Fraud Committee, which held a Capitol hearing Wednesday to grill state officials about why they were slow to act when warned repeatedly about fraud.
These are not political games. These are people's lives. This is about trying to help vulnerable Minnesotans get the services they need and protect taxpayers.
Possibly to get ahead of this oversight hearing, Walz issued his executive order to combat fraud while the hearing happened. This comes after DHS terminated the assistant commissioner in charge of the Housing Stabilization Services Program, Eric Rumdel, hours before Wednesday's Capitol hearing.
If there's any grandstanding going on or trying to hide the ball, it is not by this committee. Thank you.
He probably won't underplay it. He probably will attack it.
Democratic political analyst Jeff Hayden believes Walz is determined to fix the fraud issue, in part so it's not what he is remembered for as governor.
I think the governor really is mission driven and wants to fight and to try to do as much as he can to protect Minnesotans. And I don't think he wants his legacy to be this issue of fraud.
Joe McCoy reporting there. Right now, the Minnesota Department of Revenue is warning about a new text scam targeting personal information. How many of these do we get? They say this text asks people to click a link to update banking info and get a refund. The Department of Revenue is reminding Minnesota to not click the link, report the text as junk, and contact their bank immediately if they did share any banking info. President Trump heading back to Washington after his second state visit to the UK. Today he met with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer to talk trade and discuss how their next steps for the wars in Ukraine and Gaza will be. Starmer saying the two countries are on the same page.
We're united in defense and security. Yes, absolutely. But we're also united in the pursuit of peace. We are working together to end the humanitarian catastrophe in the Middle East, get the aid in, free the hostages, and ultimately bring Israel and the region back towards a comprehensive plan which can deliver peace and security for Israelis and Palestinians alike. We're also working together to end the killing in Ukraine.
UK teams also working on an official recognition of a Palestinian state. The UK government voting on that recognition soon, something that President Trump does not agree with, but says it is an issue if the UK does it. It is not an issue if the UK does it, Developing right now, a Pennsylvania community is mourning after 3 police officers were killed and 2 others seriously wounded in a shootout. This happened when a gunman suddenly opened fire on them as they were serving an arrest warrant. NBC's Aaron McLaughlin joins us with more.
Hey there, officials say the 2 surviving officers are in critical but stable condition. They're being treated at this hospital behind me. 3 other officers were killed when a gunman opened fire as police tried to serve a domestic-related warrant. Overnight, an emotional procession honored the fallen. Residents lined the streets with American flags. For hours, nearby schools and homes were told to shelter in place as witnesses described hearing dozens of shots. The gunman was killed in the exchange of fire. First responders, including a medical helicopter, rushed to the scene. This tragedy comes just months after another deadly shooting in the same county that left Officer Andrew Duarte dead. Pennsylvania's governor is calling for change, saying that something constructive needs to come from this violence. Back to you.
Thanks. The late night lineup. It's going to look a bit different tonight. ABC pulled Jimmy Kimmel Live off the air indefinitely. This comes after Kimmel made remarks surrounding Charlie Kirk's alleged killer being a pro-Trump Republican. The investigation thus far has not shown any evidence of that. On his Monday night broadcast, Kimmel implied the suspect in that case was politically conservative. Nexstar Media, one of the largest owners of local TV stations in the U.S., threatened to preempt airing Kimmel's show on all of its ABC affiliates, which is about 10% of those across the country. The FCC chair under President Trump posted on social media applauding Nexstar's statement. A different commissioner with the agency calling the ordeal suppression of free speech.
We must be careful not to allow the government to punish critics simply because of content. This sets a dangerous new precedent, and companies must stand firm against any efforts to trade away First Amendment freedoms.
And this story has an implication for KARE 11. Nexstar is currently seeking the FCC's approval for a multi-billion-dollar merger with the company Tegna, which owns us, KARE 11. So the political question being raised here, is Nexstar trying to curry favor with the Trump administration's FCC so that it will allow that deal to go through? Moving on. A Minnesota boy is coming home. Farm Aid organizers announced this week that Bob Dylan is joining this weekend's lineup. The legendary singer-songwriter and Minnesota native will join other stars like Willie Nelson, John Mellencamp, Neil Young at Huntington Bank Stadium on Saturday. This year marks the 40th anniversary of Farm Aid, which has raised more than $85 million to support farmers in need. Also at home, the Minnesota Lynx Drive for 5 presses on. Team is headed back home after advancing to the WNBA semifinals for the second year in a row. They defeated the Valkyries on the road in a late-night Game 2, but the road to victory wasn't easy. The Lynx were down for the first 3 quarters of the game by as much as 17 points, but they kicked things into high gear in the fourth, led by Nafisa Collier. In the last seconds, Golden State missed a buzzer-beating jumper, ending their season and giving the Lynx the win 75-74. We'll find out tomorrow who they'll face next, following the series between the Mercury and defending champs, the New York Liberty. Stick with us. More news and weather coming up after the break.